Hi, my name is Joseph, and for my project, for my statistics project, the article that I chose is "Which States Are in the South" by Walt Hickey. Some of the data that I was able to get was from a survey that they took. They had about 1,135 respondents who identify as a lot or some as a Southerner. And in order to get this sample actually from the survey monkey audience, they had polled about 2,500 people, which half were from a regional sample and half from states considered regionally south. And some of the takeaways from this survey was the Southerners were considerably more certain of which state are their own. For example, Georgia and Alabama had about 90% of the vote, and Mississippi and Louisiana had about 80%. And for other states, such as Texas, it seemed, though they're basically at the furthermost part of the South, aside from Florida, they only had 57%. And I guess some of the Southerners like to mess with Texas. If we look at this graphic here, you can see how from the Midwest gradually going down to the South, how there is a lower percentage. But even states like Arizona and New Mexico had a higher percentage, around 25%, which was still more than Maryland, which is technically a southern state. Um, and as you can see, the majority of the vote went to Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and even for Florida, actually, Florida didn't have that much. It only had about around 60 to 70% of the vote, which is a little shocking. Even for states like um, South Carolina and Tennessee and North Carolina, they only had 60%, which isn't a lot compared to Georgia and Alabama, who held the majority of the vote. And my new use of the data was the question that I came up is the mean age of those who identify as not at all Southerners significantly different than the mean age of those who did identify as a lot Southerners? And what I got from this was those who identify as not at all Southerners had the sample size of 11 and had the mean of 38 years old and the standard deviation of 12.53. And for those who identify as a lot Southerners, had the same sample size with 11 and the mean of 45 years old and the standard deviation of 15.44. And so how did I use this? I used the t-test with the null hypothesis as mule1 equal mule2, and the alternative hypothesis with mule1 does not equal mule2. And my t value is 1.167 and my p-value is 0.2567. So obviously we failed to reject null hypothesis. There is not enough significance to conclude that there's a mean difference in those who identify as not at all Southerners age and those who identify as a lot Southerners age. And just to close this off, I have a graph here that shows there's not a big difference in it between those who identify with a different type of Southerners.